You can take risks. You can push the boundaries. You can challenge yourself. You can figure things out. You can ask yourself, am I just this way because I really am? Or have I thought myself into this predicament? Have I thought myself into this physical shape? Have I been so safe and so reserved and coding the lines and I'm always going to be this way because that's just what I think I am?
Oh,
Quick on the trigger. It's Monday. I'm excited. I'm caffeinated. It is July 27th, 2020. And hey, welcome aboard Crushing Iron Podcast 394.
Yep, you are fired up, man.
I am fired up today. We just spent a nice 30 minutes doing a little pre-podcast debrief on the back deck over a coffee and an apple, and we were ready and raring to go. You know, I think, I got to
Coffee
say,
and apple.
well, I mean, you had coffee and an apple. I do have to say that now that we're in the same city and about to be sharing the same room as we do these podcasts, it might totally change the dynamic of what we've always done,
Oh, I know. I
which
thought
I
about that.
know it's like it could like just we've always been the podcast that has, and if you didn't know that, you can always hop on iTunes and see the people that absolutely hate us. We usually spend 10 minutes just talking about random shit. We just talk about life, and we connect, we catch up with each other because we'd probably talk like 2-3 times a week, and two of those are the podcast, and we just kind of ease our way in, dip our toe in the pool, wade in, and then finally get to the deep end of the podcast, the last 30 minutes, and give you the meat. But now, since we get to see each other, we're starting to dive in a little bit quick, and I gotta wonder: do people miss that, or are people gonna miss the unrelated, worthless, boring banter, or are they gonna be, thank God, they are not gonna waste my time with the top three best ways to treat your lawn and how their dogs are doing and what their favorite pro sports team is doing right now, and can we just get more about triathlon and more about life?
I think they're gonna miss it, man. And I think I hope that we're not gonna miss talking about college football, dude. It's got me a little nervous.
No, dude, we're almost like I say we're almost in September. We haven't even hit August yet, but it's the season. I can't believe it's almost August. It gets kind of crazy because I feel like back in February and March when kind of the whole world hit the fan, I was like, man, it's like it feels like forever. Now it's like freaking August, and it's like, dude, like the whole year's like I feel like it's flying by now. It feels like it has taken forever, but it is also flying by. And you got I think professional baseball started, the NBA is trying to start back, and then they're trying to figure out what they're going to do with football. So don't worry, even if we're in the same room, and we will be here in the next week or so and continue to be for the foreseeable future, we will still deliver you meaningless, worthless pro sports talk to start almost every podcast when they're actually in season. And then don't get us started on college sports because that's a whole different topic. And hey, you know what? Maybe be another podcast for another day. The C26 Professional and Collegiate Sport Podcast.
Yeah.
You can already hear the endorsements and the sponsors rolling in to line up for that one.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
hey,
Well, that could be, then we got to change our whole attitude and be like a dramatic sportscaster with hot button
oof,
issues.
yeah,
Or are we going to just kind of take our same tact?
yeah, I think we just kind of stick to what we're. Listen, if I was ever taught anything in life, is stick to what you're mediocre at. And right now, we are mediocre podcast hosts, and so I say we stick with that and stick with our shtick. And hey, speaking of mediocre podcasts, if you didn't already know, we're telling you, you're listening to one. It is the Crushing Iron Podcast. We come to you twice a week, pretty much on Mondays and Thursdays. But hey, if we don't do it Mondays and Thursdays, we always come to you twice. We have done so for about 4 years. We cover all things triathlon and all things life. We cover some of the more in-depth aspects of triathlon, swim, bike, and run training, philosophies. A lot of times we even dig into data, just the general approach you can take to hopefully increase your improvement and your level of performance in all things swim, bike, run. We'll occasionally have guests. We'll do race recaps. We'll do race previews, which I cannot wait to start doing again. But for the most part, Mike and I, as both coaches and athletes, just kind of share our experiences, what we're personally going through at the moment, what maybe our athletes are going through. We'll occasionally dive into our Facebook group, which is Crushing Iron Group on Facebook. You can go in there, answer a simple question, we'll let you in, and oftentimes take the pulse of the community, answer questions, sometimes even live on the podcast, and do our best to get through those. And that's all we do. And if we can, we don't have any sponsors and we don't have any ads, but our only agenda is to hopefully provide you with information that you can consume in an easily digestible way that will help you have a happy and healthy hobbyist style career in the sport of triathlon and endurance sports. And if you can take even a few nuggets or tips or even learn from our mistakes and apply them to your daily life, not just in training, but in how you are living on this planet with the rest of us, and do that in a positive way, then this podcast will have been a success.
Mm. Yeah, you know, I get emailed sometimes from people that say, "Don't say you're mediocre. Don't like be like that about yourself." And because be confident in what you're doing. And I kind of think it is confident to be humble and sort of humility based. But we know, I mean, we know who we are, and we talk about what's going on in our lives, and we've had a lot of experience around this sport, and that's what we do. You know, we don't claim to be professional broadcasters, but we like to have conversations. And I think that's a
Yes.
bonus actually in a lot
Dude,
of
it's the
ways.
truth.
So
It,
I
yeah,
just
no,
think,
that's a good point. But it's important. I mean, I'm not saying like mediocres and like I want you to send me an email saying that we're great. Like I think we do a pretty good job most of the time. I don't think that we're terrible, although I'm sure well, and you know this. Sometimes I get off podcast, I'm like, dude, that was terrible. Like I feel like that was just awful. But when you do that, then you get like 10 emails about how great it was, and
yeah.
then you do a podcast, and you're like, dude, we nailed it. And then you get like 17 one-star reviews because people didn't like it. You literally never know. But like one of the things that I've always found like that I think is of tremendous value to people that listen, because so many people are new to this sport, is when I was first getting into, you and I've been doing this for a while. You've been doing it for what, 7, 8 years? I've been doing it for freaking forever. It feels like 15 years. And so we've seen a lot, we've heard a lot, we've done a lot, we've had a lot of success, we've made a lot of mistakes, we've seen a lot of people do both. So that's our thing, is like we want to share those experiences with you and help you navigate that. And like that was one of the first things that I noticed, and that I really tried to like, I was kind of in awe of, is like my first couple times I went into AA rooms. I'm in recovery, been sober for almost 7 years. Was like it was just an interesting dynamic of almost business, because at that point, and it still is, my business is being sober, is being in recovery, and you get to sit in a room with people who have been 20 in their 24 to 48 hours sober, and then there are people in the same room that have been sober and clean for like 40 years. And so to be able to have like both ends of the wisdom and the knowledge and the experience, like it's truly invaluable. It'd be like trying to start a business and being able to sit in a room with people who are also starting, like doing a startup business just like you, but also sit at the same table in like a think tank with people who have been there and done that, have been successful, and have continued that way for 30, 40, 50 years. It really is an invaluable experience in order to have. And obviously, like we're not to that level, but that's what we hope. Like we can share our experiences, we can share you our obstacles, we can tell you how we've overcome them, and we can also oftentimes tell you the struggle that it is to even just try to get there, and that we've failed or come up short, and then where we succeeded, and share our athlete stories, and just overall what I think most people are going through in this day and time. And I do think that's a value.
Mm. Do you have a lot of the newcomers in there trying to act like they know it all? Is that like a thing? Or
No, they usually
okay,
keep their mouth shut.
okay.
It's because you're totally intimidated,
Uh-huh.
and just
But
totally.
maybe a year in, you're kind of like just enough to be dangerous type thing. But I always find that fascinating is when people start going down that road and they talk themselves into realizing that they don't know anything. Because you're just looking at them in silence, probably the
Well, I
veterans.
mean, well, it's like all things. Like when you first get it, I mean, if you want to understand how the world works, turn on social media, and a person can read one article from the New York Times or the HuffPost, and all of a sudden they're an absolute expert.
Mm,
That's the same thing in recovery. Like you start reading, you feel like you've got this newfound like mental shift, and you're super zen, and you can find me on the weekends in a sweat lodge, and I've got this all going for me, and like it's really fun to think that way in a bubble. And then you walk out in the real world and you're like, oh crap, I have to apply all these things to my daily life. And I'm not going to be in a room. Like it's a safe place to be in a room like that, because it's actually like one of the safest places on earth for a person like myself. Like you feel super open and vulnerable, but also very strong and confident, and you can share and do anything. And I think that's the way with triathletes and really everybody. It's like you learn something, and all of a sudden it's so new that you have this like euphoric feeling of ultimate confidence and knowledge that you know it all. But the minute you think that is the minute that you are getting dumber, or you're learning less, because you're not open to things, you're not challenging yourself, and then that's when you get slipped up and punched in the face.
mm,
In that you always have to be on it, you always have to be working, and that's why I love the sport, is that you, you can't really ever figure it out. something is always changing. And I'm not talking about like the distances of the sport or the philosophy, the outline that you might use to train yourself in a specific way, but the races, the competition, because there's so many moving parts, right? Is that like you have like you might take like even like for the best athletes in the world, they show up at a race and they're for the most part competing against a totally different field. They're competing on a totally different course. And even if they've done this course before, especially given the time of year, it could be 1 year, it could be very moderate temperature with no wind. The next year could be the exact same course. Every inch of pavement is the exact same, yet they're facing totally different conditions. It could be super hot. It could be super windy. They could have a mechanical, and to the other side of it, like they could show up to a race because I think we've all done this in training and in racing. It's like you show up to a race and you feel totally unfit for the day and unprepared, yet you go out and have this out of body experience and you just like blow yourself away with your performance. And then it's like totally unexpected and you feel like it's unearned. And pros have that same thing. Age groups have that same thing. Then you show up to the same race and you feel like you should like you feel like your PR is in stone. Like go ahead and etch your name on the PR trophy. Today is my day. It's a personal best day. I've never been this fit in my entire life. And then you hop in the water and you take a first few strokes and then all of a sudden you think, this is not my day. Like I don't have it. And it's not an indictment on your fitness. It's just like that's how things change. And then you take age groupers and you think, all right, well, 1 year, and this is like as a coach, obviously I've seen this like tremendously over the last few months, how people's lives have drastically changed and the demands they have in work and in home life. But then like even on a normal year, like last year, as you see people that are single and flexible jobs that are, they can train, as much as they want, life stress is at a minimum, and how they're able to navigate that and add in additional training stress, and then how that's applied to race day. And then the next day, same person, same goals, same mindset, yet married, kid, different job, high life stress. That makes things totally different on how you train. Like, and the sport's just complex, and its complexity is compounded by the fact that our life is complex. It's not a simple sport. It's just not. I don't think running is simple either, but it's a lot simpler. Swimming is the same. Like there's one thing to worry about. It's not connecting these puzzle pieces and the differences in how every day and every week is or every month is. Like it's very tough to navigate, and that's why I love it, because I feel like like I love problem solving. It's just like something I'm very passionate about. It's something I feel like I'm fairly good at. And except when like Hayden wants me to do something I can't do, then he's like, "You're dad, you're terrible." But for the most part, like that's why things are. That's why the sport's tough. But that's why it interests people like it does. That's why it has this like addictive effect. Because if you wanted to be perfect and you wanted to be easy, then you wouldn't be doing the sport. You would pick something totally different that was controllable always and predictable. And this sport is nothing like that.
Hmm. It's really, I find that part really interesting. The idea that you could go out and not and think it's your day and then it not be your day. But like the whole thing about triathlon is because there really is not, a clear answer, clean answer for everything. It's sort of like you have to experience it, right? So even if you get in the water and you think it's not your day, that's part of I guess experience, because how do you get through that? How do you figure out your way through that kind of thing? And I think a lot of times, going back to the beginning, how we tend to be humble about these kind of things because the sport is bigger than us, and we just kind of like go through with experience and hope that we can help others figure it out, ultimately on their own, because that's really what learning's all about, is that it's like, if you think somebody's going to show you exactly the way to do everything in the sport, you're fooling yourself. So it's sort of like, here's the thing, here's the parameters, and now you kind of have to figure out your own way and find your own way within that stuff. And to me, that's a difficult part of the sport too, because you just never know, like it's not so obvious, but like the more times you go through it, and like you're talking about in AA, the more experiences you have like that, you recognize, oh, well, this isn't really what I think it is right now, for example. So you kind of have to, stay loose and just, put your time in and figure things out through doing it. And it never does end. In fact, like, that's what I was saying that about, a person a year into something. I did think after I finished my first Ironman, boy, I had it all figured out. I got, see, I did it. I went through that. I got it. And then it seems like it's gotten tougher every year since,
Mm-hmm.
just the because you get in the weeds of it all, and then you don't have that sort of fresh enthusiasm about it all, and then you gotta kind of settle down and find enjoyment in the quote unquote mundane, or the like the average. Just go do the work. Just go out and do the work. Where's your excitement level in that? It's very difficult sometimes.
I think like I think in a way, and I was mentioning this to you earlier when we were talking before we hopped on, was that in a way, the forced ebb and flow of this year, I think it's like, listen, like it's been an incredibly difficult year for a lot of reasons. And athletes who have trained and have worked hard and who are super performance oriented, that have felt stuck in training with no opportunities to race and have always thought about, I need to figure this out. I need to figure this out, and then I need to race so I can show myself that I figured it out,
Right.
and not just so I can show myself that I figured it out, so I can then find the next thing to figure out, right? Because like that's one of like the I think more difficult aspects that people I think tend to not necessarily grasp or understand about coaching is that there is no end. Like there is no dead end. Like I work with over like the last 10 or 15 years, I've worked with very 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 few race athletes. And what I mean by that is like they're like, hey coach, like can you work with me for 3 months and then I don't want to work with you anymore. I just want to do this race and I want to give up the sport basically. Like I can count them on one hand, I think. The other ones you work with year round. You work with for like the majority of the athletes that we work with. Like I've been there for 3, 4, 5 years. Some of them 8 years. Like so, your work is literally never done. They never finish a race and they think, Coach, that was the best I've ever gotten. Don't worry about the next few years. I understand things aren't going to go very well, and I don't ever anticipate having this race again. So let's just kind of put it on cruise control. Let's put the stress level down. Let's just kind of go, right off into the sunset. No, they can have the greatest result they've ever imagined, and then the first couple sentences after their euphoria, kind of wears off is, all right, so where do we go from here? What can I do better? What can I, how do we approach the next block? How can I do this again? How can I get better here? I think I can sing a few more seconds here. Like that's how focused and detailed so many athletes are on figuring the next thing out, figuring out what the next phase looks like, figuring out what the next training block looks like. How can I shave off seconds? Because that's the other thing is like once you go from like an end of the spectrum all the way down to the other, like whereas 10 to 15 to 20 minutes you could take chunks of that off your time was very feasible. It was something that became normal to you. But as you keep taking larger and larger chunks off of it, like it's the same thing like in the highest level of sports, like you talk about the 100, the 400, the 800. Like if you're taking off like hundreds and milliseconds off, then you're seeing for them drastic improvements because of A, how short it is, but B, how insanely top end they are. And athletes see that too. And now it's like, where do I shave off 2 or 3 more minutes over the span of 5 hours or over the span of 4.5? Like that's always been one of my challenges since getting into the sport, was once I got down from like the 615, which was my very first 70.3 like 15 years ago. I've chipped my way all the way down. I think I have like 5 or 6 results in the 430s, all within like a 10-minute range. And I haven't yet been able, I say yet because I still feel like I have a 420 in there somewhere, as I just haven't been able to find a way to take just like 2 or 3 more minutes off. And if you think to yourself like 2 or 3 minutes, like you can do that in transition, you can do that here and there. Like when you get to like that end, like it's really hard, but it's still the same problem. It's still the same thing you have to try and figure out. It's still just it's something that keeps me up at night, but it's something that gets my creative juices flowing in terms of, all right, so how can you figure it out? This isn't it's not quote unquote a problem, but you want to find the solution and you're never finished. It's literally all the time. And so athletes have been stuck in kind of the it's like being stuck in a classroom for a year, and you walk in, you do your homework, you show up, you turn it in, you walk in, do your homework, it's over and over, and you might get a couple pop quizzes here and there with that are training days, but for the most part a lot of athletes aren't seeing an exam. They're not seeing a huge test where they can really show how the hard work's paying off, or they can have something real world and materialist, that's a material value to say, hey, this was great, but now I can see this because it was actually under the microscope of a race day or an event, and then now let's put this and go forward so I can have clear and clear and fluid direction moving forward. You're not having those, but one of the things that I am seeing, not from a physical standpoint, a physical shift in focus and problem solving, is I have seen a dramatic shift in most athletes' emotional and mental approach to racing. And I've got this draft. It's still in draft mode, but I usually send a weekly email out to our athlete, just kind of like checking in. And one of the things I have in there is that if all the last 4 to 5 months has taught me or you is that I've had more. We had like I think 14 or 15 athletes race this weekend. So people are racing, and we've had a lot of races last 3 or 4 weeks, and it is the first time I think ever I've gone through a 3 or 4 week period. I've had so many athletes racing, and not a single one of them has said, "Man, that didn't go the way I wanted to go. I thought I was going to perform better. I thought this, I thought that." And it's not because, I'm some, Greg Popovich of triathlon. It is because their perspective has shifted to like 100% gratitude. Like I'm just like they're euphoric. They're just so happy they got to race. No one, zero people have complained about the race management, how the race went, some annoying person in transition, about the race course, about the volunteers, nothing. Not a single complaint. I am so thankful and grateful that I got the opportunity to race. I'm so happy with my ability and my effort to go out there and perform today. Not performances in it's measured by a result. It is, gosh, like I like because racing isn't a right. It's a privilege. And we oftentimes, as with all privileges, because they're not something you really have to earn, they're something that we can just take whenever we want to, we tend to take them for granted. And if the last 5 to 6 weeks or 6 months, what it feels like, of trials and obstacles and having to rewrite training plans week after week after week, sometimes midweek, and changes to swimming and changes to life, like if it has resulted in a shift in the approach that so many triathletes take, that is now an approach of gratitude and humility and thankfulness to the opportunity to race and what they can get out of it, then this has been 100% worth it. Then I am all in favor of what's going on right now, because that's the feeling, that's the emotional response, that's the mental arousal that you need from a race. Because once the euphoric feeling and the buzz from a result goes away, like when the next day, when you start saying, but I think I can get better here, you know what's still going to be there? The memories. Those are going to be there. The experience, you're never going to forget your first race back this year. You're never going to forget your first race next year. Like people are going to be more amped for that than ever. And I think it's such a great teaching moment in how we analyze yet expect so many specific things that we feel like we can control, or under the naive premise that we can and are in total control, instead of just being flat out happy that we can. And that's what I've seen recently with athletes racing, is just this. And what I've also seen is like this total freedom. Like go out there and just blow it, just have fun. And like who cares? I told an athlete, um I think Thursday or Friday, is doing an Olympic, that he was like, all right, how do you think we should approach this? And he got to race, I think 2 weeks ago, and just had an incredible experience. And I said, dude, I want you to try and blow up on the bike. He was like, excuse me? I was like, yeah, dude, just go out there and absolutely lay the freaking hammer down. Let's just see what the hell happens. He was like, I never thought that would come out of your mouth. And I was like, well, this isn't a year for normal. This isn't a year where we plan things analytically. We plan things out. We have an outline. We stick to it. We know what we're going to get. We know where we're going. Right now is about just seizing the fucking moment. Excuse my language.
Ah,
Um,
add the check
I
mark.
know you gotta add the check mark. Sorry, dude. Um, or bleep it out. I don't care. Sorry, that was just a passionate moment. Um, but
Uh,
sorry,
uh,
sorry for the kids in the car. Um, but sorry, but hey, don't listen to that. That's not your father. But I was like, just get
yes, it
out
is.
there and just figure it out. And who cares if you blow up? Like really, who cares? Because so many athletes approach every single race so carefully and methodically, and they even do this in training. They think their way to a result, and then they analyze their performance. But what they really need to analyze is their thought process, because it's for most athletes are so scared to go out there and tempt fate and blow up and maybe have a bad experience, that they never ever reach their full potential, because they analyze and think their way to a result, and then what do? They analyze and think their way back to their performance and wonder why it didn't work out that way. Well, it didn't work out that way because your brain, not your body. And that's why I just want to say, hey, who cares? Throw caution to the wind. Just roll with it, baby. Rip it, have fun, and just let's see what happens. Because why not? Why not? Roll the dice and see what happens. And I think like that's what everyone should be doing. Right now, when triathletes are so careful about doing things and not doing this, or I might get hurt, I don't want to go do this and do that, and I want to, focus on this. And what if I'm like, dude, go out and have fun, like rip it and see what happens. Because no matter what, we're going to learn something. And I understand that that might be incredibly difficult for some athletes because if they're going to race one time this year, then they want it to be like the best experience ever. And from a result standpoint, but it can still be an incredible experience if you just get out there and lay it down and have fun and rip it and just enjoy pushing your limits and just be grateful.
Yeah, that's some good stuff there, man. When you're talking about where do you personally cut 2 to 3 minutes, and where do you find that? And honest to God, the thought that came through my mind was like, it's probably somewhere up in your head. You know what I mean? Like, in a way, and the way you just sort of described it, for example, the idea of racing free and being out there and letting go, because I think I'm really excited to actually to see how this year impacts next year, because I wonder if people aren't starting to learn that a little bit, and that ability to sort of let go and create that gratitude perspective that sort of takes that tension off the desire to, race perfectly. And I think sometimes that can be enough, just the idea of loosening everything up and just being a part of what's going on versus like methodically dissecting every inch of that race. And then all of a sudden, you're overthinking everything, and then you're tightening up, and who knows what's going on. Because to me, racing free is what it's all about. And it's not an easy threshold to cross, I don't think, for a lot of people, to let go. And we've talked about it many times, how if you look without a watch, if you're running without a watch, and all of a sudden you're feeling good and you're breathing okay, and you're going way faster than you should, quote unquote, it's hard to let that happen, because there's these numbers in our head, and we stick to them, like glue sometimes. Like, well, that's not my pace. So why not? Why not? Maybe that's as simple as breaking through mentally on some of this stuff and letting go. Because if you can do it, you can do it, right? So that's what I mean. It sounds kind of a weird thing to say, but like if you're running, if sometimes you can run faster than you think you can run, that means you can run faster than you think you can run. And why not accept that? I mean, that's a big part of it for me, is being able to accept that we can go faster, that we can go longer, that we can be stronger, and maybe we already are.
Most everyone is. And that's the thing is like I'm going through this experience with another athlete that I coach who's also a coach in that some athletes are so terrified and so focused on just coloring in the lines that they're never going to paint their best picture. They get these
Hmm.
workouts and they structure them and they've got this, the effort and the percentage and all these things you want to do, and it's got to be laid out and I've got to execute it perfectly. And they are removing the freedom of physical expression that you can go out and just rip it. Like, I'm not saying like every single day you wake up, you go out and you say, I'm going to run zone 4, zone 5 and crush myself. I'm not saying that. I'm saying when the opportunity arises and you've allowed yourself to, to go out there and run a negative split, run and just push yourself and not look at your watch and think, I've got to slow down, I've got to slow down, I've got to slow down. Go out and just blow up. Like, just blow up, because you're never going to find the top end limit unless you know what the top end limit is. And to get there, you know what you got to do? You have to go past it. You have to figure out what that top level is so you can then scale it back just a notch down and then get there. But what happens is so many people are afraid to even see what that's like. You color in the lines, it has to look perfect because I would rather look compliant and perfectly scaled down to what the session can be in a safe way to where I have to know it's a success no matter what. But I'm never, ever, ever going to find and push myself to that brink to see what might be on the other side. what might what might happen? What might it look like if I choose to just go out and color my own? And color outside the lines. And you like Hayden right now is like he's all about his like imagination and pretending and doing these things. And he's like, I'm using my imagination. You know, can I? Or he'll ask me, he's like, can I use my imagination and tell you this, or can I pretend? I'm like, dude, whatever you want to do, man. Like it's your imagination. Pretend like do say it is whatever you want to say it is. I don't care. And like when it comes to like fitness and racing and training, that same thing applies. You like don't just feel like everything has to be perfect. And in order for you to have the perfect performance, the training has to look perfectly and safe. And I think perfect's not the right way. Safe is the right word to say here. In that, in order to do things, you have to push yourselves in so many different ways and so many different workouts. Like negative split sessions are, you know, a staple of what we do. You know, adding in intervals in the bike workouts are essential to what we do. It's something we've always done. We will always continue to do. Because the adaptation, the stimulus is great, but also you have to practice the mental and emotional push and pain that you're going to have. And you're going to have to get there. And instead of telling your body to shut off and be safe, just finish. You know, and I'm not saying like put yourself in danger, but pain and danger are two totally different things. And like I think we oftentimes associate them as you know, brother and sister, but they are not. They are totally different. Is you need to get to a point to where you're super uncomfortable and think, but I can keep going. I can keep pushing. I don't have to rate and think, oh well, what if I blow up and I have to walk the last 5 minutes? Dude, who cares? Blow up. Like, because if you don't blow up, you're never, ever, ever going to figure out what your limits are. And if you really want to improve and you really want to perform and you really want to get to the highest level and the best version of you, the best Robbie Bruce, the best Mike Turali, you are going to have to do sessions where you very well know there's a pretty good chance I'm going to fail at this. And when I use the word fail, it's not as in you get an F and it's a terrible experience. It's an F as in your body gave up, but your mind didn't give up. Because for most of us, let's be honest, dude, like it's your mind that gives up before your body. If you really wanted more effort out of it, your body would produce. You know, like we give this example all the time at the end of an Ironman. Be like, oh my God, I can't. Well, I gotta walk my way home. I gotta walk my way home. Bam, 8 minute mile run on the carpet, baby. You know, it's like you can dig it out if you want to. It's a mental and emotional thing, and it's something that has to be practiced, and it's something that you have to gain confidence from because in order to have experience being there and feeling that, you have to spend time being there and feeling that. You can't just expect to have it on race day. I think I can dig deep today. Have you been digging deep in your workouts? Have you not just, and that's like my biggest thing about like short interval sessions, like those are great, like they're great for you, but the long ones that just like the long intervals with short rest, it's just as much about the stimulus as it is about the mental and emotional fatigue. You have to callous your brain, you have to callous your emotions, you have to focus on, like, you know, like these intervals that I'll do sometimes are 4x8, so 2 minute rest. Like you give 4 8 minute best efforts, which is a lot, and you only get 2 minutes rest in between. It's just a grinder. It's just like gnaws at you the whole time. It's great physically, but mentally and emotionally, you just have to just settle in and be with it. But weeks and weeks later, when they do other sessions, they think, "Oh my God, like not only am I fitter, but dude, like mentally, I can be there. I can get into that. I can get into that zone. I can get into that feeling and be like, you know what? I'm not necessarily comfortable here, but I sure as heck aren't. I'm not uncomfortable enough to leave it. I can sit here for a while, and that's that place you need to be comfortable at and going to on race day to dig it and find your way out. Like you need to be able to find and collapse yourself like a mile from the finish line. You can't be afraid to and that's I think that's the biggest thing people are afraid of is when they get out and race, they do these long runs or long rides. Like they're so obsessed about seconds that they give up minutes, that they're so afraid, like, you know, I don't think I can do nines. I think I'm going to back it down to 905s and just ride this wave and feel comfortable and be okay, because then when I'm done, I can feel like today was a success. You know what, that's also a success, punching it down and understanding where your limits are. That may end up at 820, because you know what, the next time you go out and run, you know what your safe zone is going to be, not 905s anymore. It might be 850s. And so you have to push that needle. You have to figure out where that baseline or that threshold is of comfort and pushing. Be smart about it and be tactical about it, but go there, risk it, take those chances. Like this is the year. This is the year to take those chances in training or in racing, because it's not more than likely not going to negatively impact the next week or the next training block. You just go out and push it and find it, because you're building your resume, you're figuring out things about yourself, you're building your book to go back and look on when things matter most down the road.
I think when we look at that and break that down a little bit further and talk about this idea of blowing up versus being smart. So let's use an Olympic for an example. As you were talking about that, I was trying to think about what that means. And yeah, I'm going to go out and race today and I'm going to try to blow up. Well, you just talked about somebody trying to blow up on the bike, and that's one thing. And then I just think it's a important point to talk about the idea of, you're trying to blow up, but you're trying to blow up at the end, like you said. So you stretch that scale a little bit. Like, okay, so like I'm on this 10K, where is that point where I'm gonna like put the hammer down and see what happens, see if I got it left. Well, let's say you blow up 2 miles from the finish line, then all of a sudden it's like you get done with that race and then you look back and go, okay, well, how do I learn from that experience and where did I start? Can I start that process a little bit slower or whatever the case may be and learn? But like, I guess what I'm trying to say is like, don't just like start to swim at, your highest cadence and blow up that way. Try to make it a smart blow up, like a blow up that's going to pay off and something you can learn from and be in the ballpark with it. Don't just blow up like by sprinting out of T2. You
Oh
know what I
yeah,
mean?
no, definitely
But
not. Yeah, it's definitely not.
I
Like you
didn't
want to
think you said
be.
that. I just wanted it's just occurred to
No,
me
it,
that
it
that's a
needs clarifying. Yeah, you're for sure. Like you want to be able to, if you have to, you want to have to put your car in neutral as you cruise to the finish line on fumes. Like that's basically how it should be. You should
right.
be on fumes, tank almost empty. You don't want to be running out of gas at mile 2, but you also don't want to cross the finish line with a fourth of tank left. Like that's the rub, and but that's also the practice is understanding your body, not your pace, not your power, not whatever, but your body. You have to know that feeling of, am I close to my red line? And if I am close to it, can I, with the experience I know about myself and the fitness that I have and the course that I'm on, the temperature that we're given, how long do I think I can hold this? And you have to practice that. And if I don't feel like I have it, am I going too early? Like we always go through these negotiations. Like I do this like I did a negative split run yesterday. It was just so insanely humid. The dew point was high. Normally I would do 45 minutes, easy 45 minutes building from like zone 3 to zone 4, but I knew it was so nasty. 45 minutes. I was, you know what? I'm gonna wait till 60 because I don't think that I think that I would end up just like dying at like an hour and 10. And I was like, you know, I know how I feel, and then I turned my watch off. I went blind for the last 30 minutes. I was like, I'm just gonna build into what I think I can hold for these last 30 minutes. I don't care what the pace is like because it's irrelevant because it's about effort. And then I was like, I'm just gonna listen to it. And then about like 10 minutes left, I just didn't feel very well. I was getting chills. I don't think maybe I didn't hydrate enough. I was like, you know what? Am I in danger? No. Am I super uncomfortable? Absolutely. But that's how I need to keep going. I could just stop and walk, sure, and call it. I bonked. No, I didn't. I physically didn't bonk. I was running fine, but my mind was trying to. We all have like that negotiation. It's like, dude, you're past your limits. Let's slow it down. Let's get back in the safe zone. But my body was like, dude, you're fine. And I was like, oh, I am fine. I can keep going, and then finished it out. Like but it takes practice. Like you have to push that limit and understand that and then know how long you can hold it for, and that what that takes is a very, very good understanding of your body. In order to understand your body, you have to have a great understanding of your effort and what that feels like, not what that pace feels like, but the time you can hold that effort for. The pace is irrelevant because it's dictated by temperature, terrain, humidity, wind. It's not irrelevant, but it shouldn't be the deciding factor.
Wow, I like that, man. Understanding your body, not your pace. I mean, I think that those are negotiations that we always have, and it's like that to me is the most interesting part of the sport, right? I mean, we can sit there and look at numbers and workouts and what have you, but like until we understand what that really means, that effort piece, and I just love that, understanding the effort part of it, because for me that's always been the thing, and um, I just keep playing with that, and it varies, and that again, that's what makes it so difficult, this sport, right? Because that varies depending on what you did yesterday and 2 days ago, and how you slept last night, and what you ate this morning and yesterday, and all these kind of things. So it's kind of an ongoing Rubik's cube where we have to sort of finagle around and sort of like experience all these different states mentally and physically and understand what they mean going into each day or each workout or each race. And sometimes, depending on what you got And then it depends on what you got tomorrow too, right? If it's a race, you kind of want to lay it all out, right? And you know you got time to come back. But if you got a big workout the next day, you have to do exactly what you were talking about, which is sort of recalibrate your concept of what this workout means. And, you know, even though you didn't do quote unquote 45 minutes from zone 3 to zone 4, you still push the envelope, right? I mean, you were
Hmm.
still like testing it and pushing it for what that situation was. And I just think that's so important to think about is like, you know, you see a workout and it's, you know, it's not literally not carved in stone. It has to be something that's a little bit fluid based on where you're at and what the situation is and the heat and all kinds of variables. So I just always try to get that point across. It's like, you know, that workout's sitting there, but you know, you have to, and it kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier, is you have to learn things on your own. You can't just sit back and expect someone to give you advice all day and then just be able to robotly kind of make that your life. You have to figure it out how it works for you. And I think workouts are kind of a microcosm of all that.
It's that's why I think, like, you talk about workouts being a microcosm of things, like I think that's why we also find them, like, so important and so vital, and that if we can't do them, or that they're being taken away from us, like it's it's like someone's taken, like, our shoes, like we can't leave the house, we can't do anything, like it's something that we just inherently need to get out and do things, and training allows us these, like, a million opportunities. And that's why, like, yes, I'm a huge fan of consistency for obvious reasons, not just from a physiological standpoint and what it can do for your performance wise, but practice, 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 practice. Like, we talk about them as training sessions. Most other professional sports call them practice. Like, you got BP, you got all the things you can do for professional baseball. You got spring practice for, collegiate sports. You got daily practice for the NBA. You got, scrimmages and practice for the NFL. Like, everyone else calls them practice, to go out and figure things out, to fine tune the details, to push your limits, to see what you're great at, see what you're not great at, and then fine tune it again. Come back and rework it, refine tune it again. We just call them training sessions, but you should consider them as practice. Practicing for everything, practicing for performance, practicing where you are psychologically, how you're going to move forward, what you need to work on, pushing your limits, refining them. What are you great at? What are you terrible at? Pushing those limits, taking a day off when you need to take off. Like, that's what it is. It's practice. And they say practice doesn't make perfect, but perfect practice does. And it's the closest thing we can get to it. And that's why consistency, and the time and time again, it's not just about the training and the physical exposure. It's about the mental and emotional exposure. Because you are literally, if you want to, if you're engaged, if you're not obsessed with your watch and the numbers 24/7, you can actually learn something every single time you put your shoes on. Every time you go to the pool, every time you hop on your bike, every time you do something, you can learn something. And so if you think about all the knowledge you can cultivate over months and years, that just comes back to you, and you just know inherently, that you don't have to guess on, you don't have to hope on, you don't have to wish on, that you just know. You can only get that through consistent practice, consistent exposure, consistent testing your limits, consistency overall. Like, that's why it's such a vital piece of overall best performance practice, is that it's not just a physical thing, it's also an emotional thing, because then you're physically getting better, but it also improves your decision making down the road. I'm navigating this better, I'm navigating this worse, what do we need to refine, what do we need to maybe bring back? Like, it's all about practice. And if you're only doing it 2 or 3 times a week, or very rarely, or incredibly consistently, or you're doing it great for 6 to 8 months, and you're taking 4 months off, that, like, there's so much room for improvement via just more consistent practice. It doesn't have to be, you know, at the same level every month, because it shouldn't be. It should always ebb and flow and dip, but it's still about exposure. It's still about putting yourself out there. It's still about lacing up the shoes. It's still about getting on your bike. It's still about finding a way to get in the pool, to keep those things fresh, because you don't want all the work you did to go to waste. Not just the physical stuff, not just the drop in pace, or the maybe putting on a few extra pounds around Christmas. It's that mental and emotional piece of trying to get to know you, get to know your body. People talk about this all the time in the water. Like, I think I've just lost my feel for the water after spending like 2 weeks out of it, right? But the same thing goes for swimming and cycling, and effort, and knowing your body, is like, you can become disconnected. from your body and its effort and what it needs and what's required and what it can do. You have to be reacquainted with it, or you can just always stay in touch with it and just always know.
Can I tell a quick story about swimming since you just brought that up?
No, moving on. Next topic.
Okay, next topic.
Go ahead.
Garmin Connect. No.
Oh God, don't even start this.
um, so I have been on a swimming mission lately, and in regards to this idea of training as practice, it's so intriguing to think about swimming because most of us didn't grow up swimming, at least not in the way that we train now, right? So it's sort of not, I guess, embedded in our DNA that swimming comes naturally, like maybe a run, like we ran growing up as kids our whole life and rode bikes and stuff like that. So it feels a little more natural, but swimming is always that wild card for, I'd say probably 90% of triathletes. And so what happens is how I think about swimming. It's so weird because I've been trying to get back in swim shape, and then every now and then I see these little nuggets of like, oh, there it is, and then when that happens to me, like yesterday, for example, I was kind of struggling. I was doing okay, but then at like towards the end of my 30 minutes is what I've been kind of putting out there lately. Um, I was right at the end, and like the last 100 I did, I found something, and I'm like, oh, and it was like 5 seconds faster 100 or something like that, and it felt easier, and I'm like, oh, damn it, I'm done though. And then I force myself to keep going because I'm trying to ingrain that mechanical pattern and all those feelings, like you're saying, that feel for the water, quote unquote, into my head. And to me, that's where practice really sits. Is like, and now, like as I sit here today, and I'm going to go to the pool later, that's what I'm thinking about. So when I get in there, I'm gonna be like, okay, I found that again, and now I got to start out this way and see if I can ingrain it in, because that's really, I think, so much of swimming for triathletes is that we just don't have that like youthful background or that experience that just comes natural that we can kind of find. It takes years and years and years, especially it's like like an old person trying to learn another language. It's like a difficult task. And so to me, that's what practice comes down to. And swimming is really a good example of how, one day to the next, we can just be completely different swimmers, especially if we didn't grow up with it. And I'm sure you even find that sometimes as an experienced swimmer. It's like, what in the heck am I doing here?
It's always about constant exposure. Like, oh, you're like, oh, just practice once a week, you'll be fine. That's not practice. You're just once a week repeating what you currently do and where you're currently at. You're not getting better. Like
Mm.
you can't expect to do things one time a week or once every 7 days and expect to see some drastic improvement. Yet people still feel that way about how they train, where they put things in their training schedules. Like, oh, I think I'm going to get better with running twice a week. So you're going to run twice and give up 5 days. How is that necessarily going to propel you to the next, to actually getting better? It's just so much about repetition and learning your body and learning what it can do. But the thing is like we always assume what it can do. So that's what dictates a lot of people's training, is what they think and what they assume they can do or what they can't do, and then they end up cementing and concreting that into their training schedule, eventually giving them the result they already thought. And then like, oh, see, I told you so. Like, I'm definitely doing the right thing. Like, you have to be able to push yourself to these limits, and you have to do it through practice. And because that's also the way that you can do it in a structured, safe manner. Not just, hey, I wonder if I can run 20 miles today. I never thought I could do that, but I'm gonna try it anyway. Or you can just work your way up gradually and find a way to be like, you know what? I feel like I have the confidence to do this. That confidence wasn't gained from ego. It was gained from experience. It was gained from 100 runs. It was gained from doing the mileage. It was gained from seeing your body get fitter and increase in durability. Like, these are all the things that we get from constant exposure and consistency. It's not just the physical piece. It's the emotional and mental confidence and belief system that we can get. Or for a lot of people, it's the belief and emotional rewiring that we all need to an extent, that we are good enough, that we are fast enough, that we are strong enough, that we can do and be something that we never once thought we could be. But if we just sit on our butt and think that way, then we're going to continue to always be that way. Or you can take risks. You can push the boundaries. You can challenge yourself. You can figure things out. You can ask yourself, am I just this way because I really am? Or have I thought myself into this predicament? Have I thought myself into this physical shape? Have I been so safe and so reserved and coding the lines and I'm always going to be this way because that's just what I think I am? We have to rework that. You have to rewire that. In order to do that, you have to challenge yourself. Like, that is a huge component of coaching that many of us have to address with athletes is like, listen, the problem with you isn't the physical piece. It's nothing from the neck down. It is 100% from the chin up. It is where you are mentally, where you are emotionally, the way that you think about yourself, the way that you see yourself, and what you believe inherently about your ability to accomplish anything. And if you can remove that and just frankly remove any expectations and get someone out of their own way, then their commitment and their body start doing the talking. And once that starts doing the talking, then you can hear it very loudly and it will drown out all the negative chatter and all the negative noise that your mind can sometimes make you feel like you're drowning in.
I like that.
You like that? Let's end it on that one then.
Let's end it there.
Let's end it there. Whew. Sorry, I talked a lot today and included an F-bomb. Shame on me. My wife's going to be pissed.
Ah, boy.
I know. Sorry
Come
about
on, man.
that. I know, dude. Sorry.
Talk free. Be free with your talk.
I did. I
It's
used
just a word.
It's true. This
know?
is true. Yeah, sorry, not sorry.
I'm just,
Anyway, whatever.
you know,
Trying to be
don't
free
set
here.
me off right now. Like, I'm just trying to
I'm trying not to.
just be
Moving on.
yourself, man.
Moving on. As we always say, thank you for tuning in. We appreciate you immensely. We know you have a lot of choices in your triathlon podcast endeavors, probably all 6 of them, and we appreciate that we're one of the 6. But no, we truly value you as a listener and for you giving us your time. We hope you have found today's podcast enlightening in some way and that you can apply some of it in a positive manner to your day. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, hate my language, you can contact Mike, crushingiron@gmail.com. If you have any questions,
I'll defend you to the end, buddy.
Exactly. You can always reach out to me, c26coach@gmail.com. And if you want more info on coaching, camps, and our community, along with our online hub, you can go to our website, c26triathlon.com.
Yeah, and speaking of the hub, we've got the new hub opening up here soon, and we'll have a lot more details on that. But I just wanted a quick example because we both got to test out the endless pool the other day, and you talk about we both got out of there and said, man, that sort of has an open water feel to it. So that's talk about, putting yourself in different situations, versus just kind of cruising along in a regular pool, but get in that endless pool and you really get some nice kind of testy waters a little bit. I mean, it's smooth as silk, but it's a cool vibe.
It's still different. Listen, there's swimming in open water is just different than a pool. It's a totally different environment. That's why I think this pool is so great because it can allow you to do that in the safety of your own space.
Yep, we love that. Anything else?
No, that's it. That's all I got, man.
All right, man. Well, hang on for just a second here, please.
Yep.
And I will catch up with you soon, buddy. I appreciate it.
Always.